Hey, good evening. This is Alan, and I'm here to let you know about resumes and resumes pertaining to the expectation of resumes. Because as we know, resumes has always been a gray area in trying to get those situated so we can get those jobs as needed. And I think I've kind of cracked the code on it. I've been doing resume for the past 5 to 6 years. I've helped over 100 people easily as far as creating a resume and helping them get jobs as well. I have a master's in behavioral science from Nova Southeastern University. Go Sharks! And I can definitely say I'm great at understanding people, understanding what people need, and definitely when it comes to the realm of employment, I'm great at just understanding what the employer needs and the right things to put on a resume, definitely, which is paramount. So I just want to give you just a bit of expectations on a resume and what's needed within a resume really quick here. Definitely what is a resume, and I'll let you know just kind of reading from my computer to my right hand side because I just kind of formulated a book too, so I want to give you as much defined definition with my outlook on resume as possible. So I can say a resume is a document that focuses on the past and present experiences, highlighting qualifications, job duties, accomplishments, qualifications, education, and skills. And as we know, all of those are very important within a resume because that'll highlight everything that's needed for the employer to look over as well. And why is a resume needed or important? The document provides enormous opportunities towards avenues of education, starting a business, running for office or council, and lastly, but imperative, attaining successful employment, promotion, or raise towards a desired occupation as well. And also resumes will distinguish between candidates' experiences to meet the employer's needs as well. So owners, schools, proprietors, companies, managers, government, council, as I said, those all are categories where a resume is needed as well. So, and that distinguishes between candidates as well. So that's definitely important about what a resume is and why it's important. And I always like to say a resume can be used in any effect, and it can be pertained to anybody seeking employment down to a 13-year-old trying to get a job. They can definitely use a resume, and pertaining to anybody that's been incarcerated and they're looking for work, this resume or my outlook of resumes definitely help with that as well. So I want to just give a little bit more of just the expectations of the resume, just as just the do's and the don'ts of a resume. That's going to be the focus really quick here. And I just want to put that out there because we want to know what is right and what is wrong in a resume. Definitely. We don't want to put anything that's going to deter or push away the employer from looking at your resume. So things that we want to do, we want to keep it simple. Definitely. We don't want to have jargon anywhere or the format looking crazy. We want to have things organized. We want to use basic font, 11, maybe 12, but I like to stick at 11. I like to use bullets. That's always important because that shows structure within a resume. And then we want to make sure that you meet your qualifications in the resume as far as meeting the employer's qualifications and what they're looking for, because you don't want to waste your time and the employer's time as well. You want to focus on accomplishments and job duties, and you want to print it on white paper, okay? Be very sure to proofread your resume as well as having somebody else proofread your resume too, because that'll be a great asset as far as, making sure your paperwork is situated in the right place, because there can be times if a email is wrong or just a number in your phone number is wrong, then, you can miss out on opportunities, or the spelling is just wrong all around and you're trying to get a job within the realms of, let's say, definitely teaching, counseling, where you're having to write papers and reports. So that's definitely important. You want to add a skills section because I think that's great to specify the skills that you give within the job. Every employer is always trying to find what skills that a person has. So why not have it on a resume blatantly seen? Be sure to identify your location as well of where you're at, pretty much just the city and the state. Make sure that your resume matches the job posting. I always stress relevance when you're doing a resume, always knowing what you're wanting to apply for in the position, desired position. Check for typos, of course. List dates carefully. You really don't want any gaps. You want to be sure to filter everything in and know your dates as well, because a lot of times employers will ask you about your dates too. Place your resume in a professional folder when you go into an interview. That's always great to do. Don't just walk in and just have it just in your hand like this. That's the worst thing you can do. All right. Place, and also if you have any gaps in employment, input the dates, start and the end, as well as reasonings of the gaps if there's any gaps. Babysitters, caregiving, incarcerated individuals can input jobs worked or skills acquired in prison as well. So we just don't want to say that you are incarcerated. Instead of that, you would put in place what skills that you learned or what job you were doing in there, even if you weren't getting paid for it for sure, but you were still doing job duties and providing skills and growing skills within that. So we want to always magnify that as well. All right, now a couple of don'ts on a resume. We do not want to include personal information, kids, family members, things like that. That's just a little too touchy of a subject. Also, do not label it resume. Do not date the resume. Do not insert physical characteristics as well. Any pictures, things along those lines are not needed. Do not include grammar school if higher education is present as well. So I don't believe you should put you graduated from Mr. Senior High or whatever high school if you have 2 degrees or if you have a bachelor's degree and things along those lines. Kind of leave that for the interview if they want to ask that, or when you get more in depth of documents, then I'll put that as far as a high school. But when you're going for in-depth positions and you already have a degree and things along those lines, you always just want to specify that as well and leave some things so they can ask you in the interview, or making it, or it being intriguing to them so they can call you in as well. Do not input unrelated work experience. Please, you want to stay relative. As I say again, you want to stay relative. Do not use negative words. Do not input references. Do not insert I in a resume. That is the last thing you should never do that, not even the last. Also, do not use fancy paper. Do not leave gaps in history. Do not use font over 12. Please do not. And do not use margins over an inch. You want to have your margins at a good space. Do not submit wrinkle or stained resumes. Of course, we all would know how that would look in an employer's hands. And also, do not exceed over 2 pages. I have to slow down on that because I get that a lot, and I've gotten that for the past 5 to 6 years on how long a resume should be. And my answer is no longer than 2 pages. Your resume is fine to be more than 1 page. Let's think about it for a second. If you're a person that has 10 to 15 years of experience in the field, would it make sense to have 1 page of a resume if you have that much experience and that much education and skills and qualifications to fit on 1 resume? And if you make the font too small, the employer won't look at it. So 2 pages is definitely fine, especially if you're an experienced person. 1 page may work for a person that is just getting out of high school, just getting out of college as well. But 2 pages is fine. Now, if you extend 2 pages, that's when it's too much. And now you're speaking paragraphs, and the employee will just they won't even turn to the 3rd page. They'll just push your paper over to the side. All right. Because we always have to remember there's always stacks of resumes that employers are looking for. I was a supervisor before at my previous job, and definitely we went through resumes, and it took some time. So unfortunately, those that were extremely long or looked unstructured and structured, it was a problem there. Also, do not input unprofessional emails on your resume. Please do not. So we don't want to put any derogatory names or anything along those lines. You kind of want to put your first and your last name, or your initials of your first and last name, vice versa, at Yahoo, at Gmail, at whatever.com. But please keep it professional, because that is one of the things that employers look for as well. Remember, when they're looking through that stack, it's process of elimination. Okay? All right. Now, I just want to go to the final thing, and I just want to give you guys the outlook of exactly what an employer looks at when they're going through that stack of resumes, because we have to understand to meet the employer's needs, because if we don't meet the employer's needs, you're not going to get called for an interview. So what's the point there, right? So we have to understand where they're coming from. So the time I took in the last 5 years, I've spoken to a lot of employers as far as HR and asked them questions about what they're looking for within resumes and what's important, as well as been to a lot of seminars where we spoke with big HR companies and what their outlook was on resumes on that too, to make sure that employees can be seen, because they do want to hire you, but you have to have the right document in place, and it has to be formatted the right way and the right information to be seen as well. And there's many people, resumes that I've done, and when I've given them back to them, they'll look at it and say, wow, this is me. And I'm like, yeah, this is you. You know, it's just the way that you word everything and the way that you space everything out as well. All right, so I'm just going to give you a quick 1-2 look of an employer's expectations as far as a resume, so you can get that phone call, because I've been able to get people, as far as completing their resumes, over 50% interview rate, so increased. So, you know, it definitely works, and I really believe in what I have figured out, and just trying to just show the world that as well. So as far as a resume, as we see one here, I'll just show you a quick glimpse there. That's pretty much the formatting of a resume. As you see, this one here is 2 pages. Now with a resume, an employer usually takes about 10 seconds to look at a resume. Remember, we have a couple stacks that they may have on their desk. So you got about 10 seconds on your resume. Now to know that, a lot of time they spend 4 seconds at the top, 2 seconds at your middle area, and then you get 4 seconds at the bottom. So first, with that being said, you have to think about the focus of what you want, where your importance needs to be. And now with me saying that, we know there needs to be more on the top and the bottom. Now, reason being, on my resumes that I formulated, and my book will be out in about a month or 2 or so, so you'll see that coming out as well. But I have the professional summary on top, and then I have the qualifications right after that. Those are extremely important, because that's going to show the employer exactly what qualifications, what skills you bring to the table, on top certifications, so that you can add into qualifications as well. So the first 4 seconds, you're already giving them what they may be looking for as well. Now towards the middle area, let's say about 2 seconds here, as you can kind of see, 2 seconds, that's the work experience area. Now in the work experience area, it's morely focused on your position, where you've worked, as well as your time that you spent, because they look for gaps. And that only takes about 2 seconds to look, because they're only skimming where you worked, your gaps as far as how long you've worked there, and where you were employed, because employers love to hire people that were employed at great places. And that's a quick hint to you guys as well too. So just know that, and make sure that you have great dates. Your dates are situated with no gaps, and you make sure that you have professional titles for your job positions that you have as well. And they're relevant. Again, it has to be relevant too. So do know what you're applying for. Now, when we get to the bottom portion of the resume, my focus has always been 4 seconds, as I said, education and skill. That's my next focus there. Because as we know, education always determines the employer's, pretty much determines a lot for the employer as far as the education, because that can be a make or break. If the person doesn't meet the education factors, then they can't be qualified for the job as well. So an employer is always looking for the education. And I put it at the bottom because I know that employers will look at the bottom of every person's resume for that amount of time, about 4 seconds. And as you see right under the education, guess what I popped there? I put skills there. I have about 12 skills that they get a chance to look at as well. And now we're just amplifying the skill sets that we're having, and we're showing them that we have. And if you really looked at that resume for a moment, everything that I pointed to was specified as far as the skills, educations, qualifications, and your professional summary of what you're bringing to the table. And then those 2 seconds that they're looking at is just your work experience as well. I mean, your work experience and where you work. Because if you kind of think about, a lot of times, a lot of companies, I'm not going to say a lot of companies, but we have companies out there that want people that's fresh. So if you think about that, they're not as crazy about the job duties, but they want to make sure that you've worked somewhere, as well as the duration of where you work too. But as I said, the focus is at the top and the bottoms. And if we have the top and the bottom situated in the right way, then definitely you'll get a call. because within those 10 seconds, they're seeing all your qualifications, your summaries. They're seeing really quick here as far as how long you've worked at the